The house lights were dimmed to a twilight blue, the kind that tricks the body into forgetting the hour. Midnight dress rehearsals at Pinebrook Community Theatre were both a necessity. Everyone held day jobs, and a secret thrill. A few stolen hours when ordinary lives slipped into costumes and spoke lines that were never entirely their own. Dust motes hovered like jittery fireflies in the spotlights, and a hush had settled over the company as the overture began to boom from the battered speakers overhead. Adrian Cross, the leading man, waited in the wings, rolling his shoulders with the casual grace that made local audiences swear he had Broadway in his future. He'd once told an interview for the Pinebrook Gazette that the meat-packing plant where he worked days dulled his senses and the stage reawakened them. Tonight he wore a frock coat that glimmered silver under the lights and concealed a flask in his right boot, a superstition he claimed lent courage to the second act duet. Across the stage, hunched on a rolling paint-splattered ladder, Zara Quinn tightened the final knot on a length of hemp rope. She had designed every set piece for this revival of Moon over Windermere, a whimsical Edwardian romance. Yet whimsy hadn't come easily this time. Weeks earlier, the director, Margot Lane, had trimmed her budget and tossed out her favourite concept sketches. Tonight, Zara's jaw still ached from clenching against the insult, and the brush strokes on the great painted river valley behind the manor house bore witness. They were broader, angrier, more turbulent than any other backdrop in the series. Toby Fields, the stage manager, whispered a cue. The backstage crew hauled on pulleys, and Zara's river valley backdrop ascended with a leathery groan toward the grid. Adrian stepped into his first spotlight, voice low and steady, as he delivered the opening monologue, a promise of impossible love and impending war. His words echoed off the rafters, finding new corners of the old theatre, where no sound had lodged in years. Zara climbed down the ladder, wiping her palms on fatigued cargo pants, eyes following the backdrop's ascent. She noticed a loosened cleat, something she'd mentioned to Toby 2 nights ago. He'd said he would add it to the fix-it list. From where she stood, the rope looked frayed, strands of hemp resisting their twist like tired sinews. A hush bred of worry fluttered across her thoughts, but there was no time for tools now, only lines and lights, and whatever gods protected hasty theatre. 45 minutes later, Adrian reached the scene everyone lived for. The storm-tossed reunion on the manor's terrace. Willow Hart, Pinebrook's newest ingenue, glided into position, her ivory dress trembling as if the chiffon itself could feel the tension. Adrian clasped her hands. His voice softened, dropped to a whisper, and the audience of exhausted actors and 2 unpaid interns leaned in, hungry. A sound split the moment, wooden, flat, and unmistakable, the snap of something heavy losing its anchor. Above them, the River Valley mural quivered. A single sandbag used to counterweight the drop line plummeted, thudding beside Willow's hem. Heads jerked upward in unison. A collective gasp tore free just as the great painted canvas shuddered, ripped from its batten, and descended like a nightmarish curtain. Adrian shoved Willow aside with more speed than chivalry. She sprawled onto the stage apron, arms flailing for balance. The backdrop slammed into Adrian's shoulders, driving him to his knees, and then flat to the boards. The sound resembled a giant door slammed in anger, hollow, resonant, definitive. In the frozen breath that followed, only Zara moved. She sprinted forward, voice catching on Adrian's name, fingers clawing at the layers of canvas. Chaos erupted. Toby cut applause lights that had never been meant to ignite. Roman Patel at the soundboard killed the overture mid-chord, flushing the speakers with a painful hiss. Margot screamed for house lights, her director's authority splintering into raw panic. Crew members rushed the stage, overturning a gilt bench, tearing at ropes with pocket knives. When they lifted the canvas, Adrian's torso looked segmented, as though someone had sliced out a vertebraic swath of him and failed to patch it back. Blood filmed his lips. Each rasp for air grew wetter. His eyes fixed on Zara, pupils dilated, searching for something she could not give. Absolution or mercy, or perhaps a final line. In the silence before the ambulance sirens converged on Maple Street, Adrian muttered, "That river's ferocious, Quinn," then exhaled quietly into stillness. The rehearsal never resumed. Police sealed the building while paramedics maneuvered Adrian's body onto a gurney beneath the dangling four-stage lights. The backdrop lay crumpled to one side, its idyllic valley now a mountain of evidence. Officers snapped photographs, measured rope lengths, and inventoried every cleat, clamp, and counterweight. Zara sat on the edge of the orchestra pit, fingers splotched purple with mixture of paint and blood, staring at her shoes as if they belonged to a stranger. Detective Hugo Seidel conducted triage interrogations in the lobby, where foam coffee cups sat abandoned on the concessions counter. Most statements converged on the same timeline. Zara had finished touch-ups, Toby had given the signal, the backdrop had raised without trouble. No one saw the rope fray further. No one expected the catwalk to betray them. All tragedies in community theatre possess at least one shared verse. I thought everything was fine. The next evening, Margot reconvened the cast in the green room, more a windowless cinder-block chamber than a room anyone might describe as green. A ghostly hush replaced the usual gossip. She announced that performances were postponed until further notice, and a memorial service would be scheduled when Adrian's family allowed visitors. Heads nodded. Words seemed both useless and too much. Willow Hart didn't speak. She slipped away to the scene shop, drawn not by curiosity, but by a persistent itch behind her sternum that insisted something was off. Under fluorescence, sawdust dulled the scent of paint, and rows of flats leaned like sleepy giants against the walls. On a work table lay Zara's sketchbook. The cover bore gouges, as though someone had tried to cut it open with a screwdriver. Willow knew artists guarded sketchbooks the way actors guarded monologues. Leaving one out felt as odd as misplacing a lit match. She flipped to the newest page, a charcoal study of the Manor's terrace. Across its width, Zara had scrawled in aggressive vermilion, "Let the river swallow the false." Startled, Willow rubbed the ink to prove it was dry, then turned back to the front. Earlier drafts listed precise rigging diagrams, including the warning, "Replace cleat before final raise." The note had been circled 3 times in green, then crossed out in red, as though 2 minds warred on the paper. Willow snapped photos with her phone. A door creaked open, and she palmed the device into her pocket. Zara stepped inside, green eyes rimmed with fatigue, auburn ponytail trembling. For a second, her gaze flicked to the sketchbook, then away. "I needed fresh air," Willow lied, gesturing to the near non-existent ventilation. "Hard place to find it," Zara replied. She retrieved the book, hugging it to her chest. "I keep wondering why the line failed." "I saw your note about the cleat," Willow said gently. "You told Toby?" "Told, emailed, sang it like a damn chorus," Zara muttered. "Budgets slice corners, corners slice people." Her voice cracked. Whether in grief or guilt, Willow could not tell. Later that week, Toby found Willow by the dressing room mirrors. Stage makeup kits sat half open, rouge drying in tiny porcelain bowls. He confessed he'd meant to fix the cleat, but a shipment of rental costumes had arrived early, and he'd been buried in undone stitches. "I checked it hours before curtain," he insisted. "It looked worn but stable." "Could someone have tampered with it?" Willow asked. Toby's hand trembled as he adjusted a light bulb that no longer functioned. Who'd want to hurt Adrian? An uncomfortable roster formed silently between them. Jealous understudies, unpaid creditors, lovers scorned by charisma that didn't clock out at 5 p.m. Community theatres were small towns. Alliances shifted nightly with the call board. A memory tugged at Willow. 2 nights before the accident, she'd heard raised voices behind set walls. Adrian and Zara arguing, though she only caught fragments through the plaster slats. Something about promises and ode. At the time, she'd assumed it was Adrian's usual flirtation pitched to someone new. Now the recollection pulsed. Willow persuaded Detective Seidel to listen. They met in the lobby, the concession counter still quarantined by yellow tape. She relayed the overheard argument and showed him the photographed sketchbook pages. Seidel's brows knitted. "Miss Quinn hadn't volunteered any quarrel," he said. "We'll re-interview." The next day, Zara was escorted to the station. The rumour sprinted through Pinebrook faster than ticket vouchers. Some declared her innocent before sundown. Others remembered her temper the night the director slashed her budget and quietly formed opinions cemented by gossip. Inside an interrogation room that smelled of stale coffee, Zara folded and unfolded her hands. "We did argue," she admitted. Adrian, she said, had borrowed money months earlier to repair his van. In lieu of repayment, he'd offered a favour. He'd convince Margot to restore Zara's original scenic concept. But budgets cement, and Adrian's influence was less than he bragged. On the night of the rehearsal, he'd confessed the favour was impossible and joked she could paint something cheap, paint it twice if they needed variety. "I was furious," Zara said. "I don't like being lied to." She denied touching the rigging after her final touch-ups. "I'm not a killer. I just paint what they ask." "Sometimes paint is enough," Seidel said, sliding forward the photo of her River Valley tapestry. "These swirls look more like rapids than romance." "It was a story beat," Zara murmured, eyes glassy. 2 weeks dragged by. Adrian's funeral filled the Lutheran church to sagging capacity. Willow sang "Abide with Me," voice bruised around the high notes. Zara sat in a back pew, hands clasped so tight her knuckles lost colour. Margot placed a single theatre ticket stub atop the closed casket, opening night that would never open. After the service, Willow found Zara in the parking lot, rain skimming their umbrellas. "They'll arrest me soon," Zara said flatly. "I can feel it." "Did you sabotage the rope?" Willow pressed. Zara looked skyward, raindrops streaking mascara. "No, but I may as well have. My art fell, my anger, my responsibility." Willow chewed her lower lip. That answer didn't sit right. She'd watched Zara paint for hours, saw compassion layered beneath frustration. There had to be another variable. Her phone buzzed, a text from Roman Patel. "You wanted rigging logs. Found something." They met under the proscenium that evening, the theatre still sealed from casual volunteers. Roman, whose affection for spreadsheets rivaled his taste for heavy metal riffs, produced a printout. After the police left, they inventoried sandbags by weight. One bag's label read £20, but scale reads 35. "A heavier counterweight would yank the backdrop harder," Willow whispered. "Enough to shear a weakened rope, even if it had been passable." Roman nodded. Toby's notes showed correct counts that afternoon. They traced the rope path upward to the catwalk. Dust and paint chips littered the boards, but something else caught Willow's eye. An empty burlap bag tucked behind a lighting can, its label slashed off. She snapped photos. A piece of strong duct tape on the floor bore initials scribbled in black marker. E.M. Edgar Moss, veteran character actor, had a habit for labelling everything. Edgar was also Adrian's understudy. A reliable one, gentlemanly, punctual, but an understudy all the same, condemned to bowing from the second row of curtain call. When Willow and Roman located Edgar at Pinebrook Cafe, he was hunched over lukewarm tea, scripts piled like fortifications. He offered a wan smile. "You two look like conspirators." "What were you doing on the catwalk night of the accident?" Willow asked, sliding the burlap bag across the table. Edgar's eyes misted. "Saving the show." He sighed before explanation could be demanded. Adrian was, inebriated again. He'd never make his second act entrance. Margot would cancel, donors would pull, months of work gone. I added weight to the sandbag, just enough to drop the set, force a pause, create intermission energy. I didn't consider the rope. He fingered the cardboard collar of his takeout cup. Didn't consider his spine either, did I? Roman's knuckles whitened. You could have killed Willow too. Any of us. Edgar swallowed. It was supposed to miss. A spectacle, nothing more. My measurements were guesswork. Willow phoned Seidel. The arrest was quiet. Edgar entered the squad car, clutching the script of Moon over Windermere, pages fluttering in the night wind like surrender flags. Days later, Zara returned to the theatre. Police released the scene. Clean-up spells and union carpenters would handle repairs, but the River Valley backdrop remained folded center stage, an elephantine bruise on the floorboards. Zara knelt, smoothing the canvas as though tucking in a wounded child. Willow approached, a roll of fresh, primed muslin under one arm. "I should torch it," Zara murmured. "Paint over it," Willow countered. "Make the river gentle again." Zara's eyes glistened. "Open the show. Eventually. Community theatres rise on hope and thrift. Adrian would have hated a dark house." They stretched the new cloth across the floor, taping edges with quiet determination. Under Zara's brush, the river narrowed, its current gentle, the manor's terrace bathed in forgiving morning light instead of tempestuous dusk. Willow mixed colours, handing palettes like a nurse passing scalpels. In the hush that settled between them, grief found shape, a confluence of pigment and silence. When the final stroke dried, Zara stepped back. The backdrop glowed softly, as if the canvas had remembered dawn. She exhaled a breath she'd been holding since midnight rehearsal. "The river's still ferocious," she whispered, "but it learned to flow around the ones who stay." Willow dimmed the work lights, leaving only the footlights to cradle the fresh scene. Outside, the marquee remained dark, but inside, the story, tattered, stitched, repainted, waited to rise again.